Armando, it's really nice to see you here in Amsterdam in person again.
Yeah.
You're keeping well.
Nice to see you too as well.
So we're here with a number of clients. I know you've been talking to people about trends and developments in Latin America. What's going on?
Yes, there is happening a lot of things in Latin America. Basically, we can start with Colombia with a huge tax reform that they have implemented, in which they have introduced certain willful taxes now. They have implemented a new criteria in order to have tax presence on digital services. This is something that you can see that they want to go further and try to not to follow what is happening at the level of the OECD, notwithstanding that Colombia is a member of the OECD. They have decided to tax the digital presence in Colombia. And also there has been certain movements in Pillar 2 in which they want to include a qualified minimum top of tax in Colombia. In other regions, for example, it's very interesting because Chile now has, the president has put it on consideration of the Congress, a very huge tax reform that has been rejected by the Congress. They didn't get the possibility to go forward with tax reform, and there are several other items that there will be impact in the investments in Chile and foreign investment basically in Chile, but nevertheless the Congress has said no, and this is something that has been important. In other countries, we can say the case of Brazil. Transfer pricing has been approved now, and there is an pending reform in relation to how will be the future corporate tax rate. They want to reduce it to 26% from 31%, and the other point that is very important, they want to tax the distribution of dividends. That this is something that there will be around 20%, and the point here is that with tax treaties you can reduce that from 15 to 10%. So this is something that can be very interesting to see. And another development probably is what will be the future of the free zones in LATAM, such as that are located in Costa Rica, and Panama, and Uruguay. Taking into consideration the implementation of the minimum tax around the world, these jurisdictions depends basically in the uncertain degree of the economic development on the free zones. So they are now paying the cost not to slash that. And now when they are facing the challenge of what they have to do in order not to lose the competitiveness of these regions, but on the other way around, they don't want to pay the deal because other countries could take that money. So this is one of the things that we have seen in the region, and this is something that is very important to keep in mind. Actually, finally in Mexico, what we have seen is a lot of movements in the court decisions. What we are a little bit concerned is more and more we are seeing changes in the tax legislation using the courts. And this is something when you see that certain positions that have been made by the tax authorities are endorsed by the courts. And now there are some issues in value-added tax that are important. There are some issues in income tax that are important. So this is something, the atmosphere that we are seeing now in that channel.
Gosh, there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on. That free trade zone point is really interesting. Perhaps unintended consequence for these countries, at least, of politics.
Correct.
Now, you mentioned all those things, but I also understand there's also quite a few elections happening this year. How is that going to be impacting tax?
Yeah, this is an important question. For example, we have seen that in Argentina, at least, there will be an presidential elections at the end of the year. So any single initiative has stopped until see what will be the final outcome on that. Now we have a left party ruling the country, and we don't know exactly what will be the final outcome in relation to if there will be a winner from the right side or the center. This is something that we need to wait and see because the policy can change dramatically in that part. In the case of Mexico, we will have elections in 2024, and this president, since the beginning, he said, I don't want to increase any tax or to create a new tax, etc., etc. And there is a big question mark. What happened with Pillar 2? That will be implemented in Mexico or not? Do we want to have a qualified minimum top of tax or not? And this is something that is important for Mexico because we have at least 110 companies that will be affected by Pillar 2. And we don't know if Mexico wants to tax that or not. This will be a new tax, yes, because it's something that is different. So many jurisdictions are implementing as a separate law from income tax. So we need to see what will be the decision from the Mexican side in that respect. But if we continue with this policy that the president has declared that he doesn't want to include any new tax, seems to be that we will have Pillar 2 at least until 2025.
So just with that does bring me to another question, which is just your forecasts about what's going to happen with Pillar 2? Because that's quite a serious outcome.
Definitely, yes. One of the points that we have seen in the region, the only country that has made a movement is Colombia, putting the qualified domestic minimum top of tax. The problem of this tax is that it's not following all of the things and all of the matters that has to be included when you want to calculate that. So we are expecting that the Colombian government has to issue regulations for the purposes to remove what are the things that are not in line what is provided in the guidance of Pillar 2 for qualified domestic minimum top of tax. And also, it's important to mention that there is no further movements in relation to apply the income inclusion rule or under tax payment rule. In other jurisdictions, for example, Brazil is saying, my CFC rules are so strong and those rules tax everything that I need. So the implementation of Pillar 2 is not necessary for me. In the case of Mexico, as I told you, we have there is a good scope of companies that will be subject to a Pillar 2, but there are two things that we are seeing. First of all, there is a complexity, of course, in the implementation of the Pillar 2. The capabilities and skills in order to provide a good tax examination probably are not in place now. And basically, our companies can use, for example, a software in order to determine a final number. But in a tax examination, not only you have to provide a final number, you need to put all of the legal arguments why you end up with that number. And this implies a lot of knowledge about the rules and the way that you are implementing. So this is something that will be challenging for any tax administration in LATAM, but specifically in Mexico. But every single resolution has to provide rationale how you end up in that result. So this is something that will be very interesting to see. And the other thing, and under tax payment rule is a rule that has been examined that there is a potential constitutional problems in the implementation of that. Because when you want to tax a company for the reason that the sister is not subject to taxation, in legal terms in Mexico and other Latin countries, it is not possible that you impose an income tax because you are not modifying your patrimony at the end. So when you don't have a positive change in your patrimony, you cannot be subject to taxation. It's not your subsidiary, it's your sister, it's your related party. So in that regard, it will be very interesting to see if there is a constitutional problems in the application of the UTPR.
So this is going to be a watch this space because first of all, you start off describing just how many different things are going on that are really impactful in the region. And then we've got the question of the elections and various countries maybe delaying things. And then this whole question about Pillar 2 and constitutionality and related problems. This is definitely a space to keep watch. No wonder everyone wants to talk to you this week here at FSAD. Thank you, Armando.
My pleasure, Rodney.